Hey everyone, and welcome to our Sikich webinar today. 3 ways NetSuite and Salesforce work together for a competitive advantage in professional service organizations. Before I bring on our presenters today, I do want to talk very quickly about a few webinar rules and tips here. As you can probably already tell, all attendees are muted for the duration of the webinar. If you do have any questions at all, please let us know by typing that into the chat box on the live stream page right below this webinar. Uh, we come to you here because we want to see your questions, and we'll make sure to get those questions followed up by one of our professional consultants, whether that's today during the webinar or in a follow-up email. Speaking of a follow-up email, this webinar will be recorded and sent out via email, so feel free to reply back to us there if you have any other additional questions that you weren't able to get to today or questions that you'd prefer not to share in our chat below. Like peanut butter and jelly or macaroni and cheese, we are better together, right? And so is NetSuite and Salesforce. There are 3 ways NetSuite and Salesforce work together best. And that's what we're going to go over today during our webinar. First, we're going to, Matt Mountain, partner on our Salesforce practice. He's going to go over selling within Salesforce. Then we'll move over where Chris Manchester, one of our managing consultants on our NetSuite practice, he'll be talking about sales operations to the NetSuite execution of what happened in that sales cycle. And then for 3, we'll talk about service and account management in Salesforce. All of these 3 things together, of course, make NetSuite and Salesforce work together really well, and we hope that we can show you that during today's webinar. Now to introduce, while you won't see their faces during the webinar today, you will get a quick picture of who these people are talking to you. We have today's presenters as Matt Mountain, partner in Salesforce, like I said, and Chris Manchester, managing consultant on our NetSuite practice. I am going to bring on these presenters today. We're going to start with Matt. Matt, welcome. Thanks for being here.
All right, well, thank you very much. And what we're going to do as part of today's webinar is show you some things from a Salesforce and the NetSuite standpoint on how they work together extremely well and how you can manage both the front end all the way through the back end and even back out to your clients to provide them with a significant value proposition. What we're going to show you first is from a Salesforce standpoint, actually managing those opportunities and putting together those quotes. So here we are on Salesforce, and we are going to select an account, and let's select Ohana Inc. And what we're going to do is, instead of walking you through everything here, we're going to go create a sales opportunity. So let's go create a new opportunity. And let's just call this the Ohana project. Just the Ohana project. And we think it's probably $100,000. And close date, we think it's probably going to close by the end of April. And what stage are we at? We're at the prospecting stage. So I just created a new opportunity here. So let's go and actually take a look at our opportunity. So I'm going to refresh the page here. And when we pull up the opportunity, we are going to look at the information that we have here on the page. Now, you can see that we're at the prospecting stage, but we're going to fast forward here, and we're going to say that we've already got to the value proposition. We've talked to them, have a good idea as to what they're looking for. So I'm just going to click on value proposition here and say mark as current stage. And when I do that, it's going to change the stage down here also. So now we're at the value proposition stage, and now it's time to put together a quote. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Salesforce CPQ. And the reason why we're going to use Salesforce CPQ, which stands for Configure Price Quote, is because based upon what they're interested in, there's going to be dependent choices that we can do as part of that project. So I will show that to you. So let's go in here to quotes, and we're going to create a CPQ quote. So I'm going to make it the primary quote. It's going to be associated to Ohana, and it's going to be a quote. We could put in who the rep is and other things, but for purposes of this, I'm just going to go ahead and save it. So that now creates a quote record in Salesforce, nothing more than a record. So now what we want to do is we want to go in and add line items to that quote. So I'm going to click on Edit Lines. And what this is going to do is start walking me through a configurator. So as part of the configurator, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add products. Now, when I add products, this is walking me through guided selling. So based upon what I select here as part of these initial values, it's going to recommend a product set for me. So in terms of addition, I want the premium. Is it a new logo? Yes. And how many employees is this going to be for? Let's just say 100. And I'm going to click the suggest. What it's going to do is it's going to come back with the initial product to start with. So it's recommending the premium bundle. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And I'm going to click select. Now, what it's going to do as part of this is it's also going to come back with other options for me. So it's going to recommend product B here. I may or may not want it, but for purposes of this, sure. Then it gives me some add-ons. So I can take a look at two add-ons. One of them is does have volume discounts. The other one is not discounted. But again, all this would be set up ahead of time based upon your business rules. So let's just go ahead and select this one, but maybe not product E. And then it also gives me what's called dynamic options. So if I select product F, it's going to hide G and H. But if I select G, it would only hide F. So again, based upon what I pick, dependent actions take place. So let's just click product F here, and we're going to see G and H all of a sudden be hidden. And then there's also some consumables, and that's fine. Let's just go with those. So I've just gone through initially and configured what we're proposing to the client, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, what that's going to do is update the quote record. So now I've got a listing here of what we are going to be proposing to the client. And the total comes to $11,430. But I know that they've only got a budget of, let's say, around $10,750. So let me go through here, and I'm going to apply a discount here, and I'm going to apply a discount of 20% here and 20% here, and let's see if we can get closer. And I'm just going to do a calculate. And what you're going to see is based on business rules, I can't discount more than 15% on anything without having the system automatically go for manager approval. Well, I don't necessarily want to do that. So let's go back in here and let's just delete that out, and let's just delete that out. And I'll just do a quick save here. And so now we're back to the original quote where it's 11,430. So another feature that's built in here is, as I mentioned, they've only got a maximum of 10,750. Now, I put that in the target customer amount. And when I hit calculate, what you're going to see is that this whole column is populated. And what it's going to do is it's going to go through and apply discounts accordingly to get the subtotal to be $10,750. And I go, hey, that looks good. I don't have to go to my manager for approval. That's great. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now I'm at the point where I've configured it, I've priced it, and now I'm ready to send it to them. So what we're going to do is we're going to generate a document. And there can be three kinds of documents. There can be a proposal, a contract, a quote. In this case, let's just send them a proposal. So what it does, based upon, again, your business rules, is it will define what templates to use and which ones are optional. So do I want the optional brochure? Yeah, let's add it in there. So I'm going to add that. And let's go ahead and just take a quick preview of this. What this is going to do is this is behind the scenes is going to do quote mail merge, and it's going to merge a lot of the data into the template and be able to produce a PDF that can then be sent directly from Salesforce. So we're in this case actually taking 3 documents and merging all of them together and combining it with the data. So as we look at this, it's a proposal for Ohana and prepared for, prepared by, and dear Mr. Customer. And here's a listing of all the products, and you can see the discounts as well as what the total came out to be, 10,750. And then we also have in here a master agreement that's already included. So with the 3 different template types, you can have, in this case, 3 different outputs or more based upon your business rules. So we would then send this off to the customer, ideally through an e-signature tool. They would approve it, and then we would be able to go into Salesforce, mark the opportunity as close won, and then move on and execute on the project.
Now we're going to take a quick look at the overall architecture to put some context into A, what Matt just showed, B, how we're going to handle the back-end processing of that customer sales order and project in NetSuite. And then we're going to bring it back full cycle into talking about things like how we handle both service and support, and then ultimately a concept of Experience Cloud where we're communicating with our end clients on a number of different areas. So if you see the graphic here, what Matt just went through was the Salesforce selling process. So we skipped through a little bit quickly, but at one point, Ohana was a lead in our Salesforce environment, gathered by a number of different areas, whether it was internet searches, etc. They ultimately became an account. And what you saw in the last section is Matt created an opportunity for Ohana. He focused largely in the estimating, proposal, and quoting stage, really orchestrating and showing, identifying what CPQ does for professional services or organizations. Now, for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to call it an IT services environment that will kind of paint a picture of how we can then take what Matt produced out of the CPQ or configure price quote tool and ultimately execute that in our backend NetSuite system. What I'm going to start to show is how our customer ends up in NetSuite, our sales order or booking, the project management tool within our NetSuite application, and a number of different features that go along with our project management, being project tasks or a WBS structure, some of the resourcing that we can align how we're executing the projects with the people who are going to be assigned to it, how we can handle some of the billing scenarios, both from time and material based, recurring, and a number of different billing operations. We'll start to track things like project status. How are we actually executing on this project? Time entry, invoicing from our billing system, revenue recognition from a percent complete perspective, and then taking some of those various data points and bringing those back up into what we call Experience Cloud to really give a customer-facing experience. We'll also talk again about some of the service and support and how that ties in with our NetSuite environment. The first integration point that we're going to talk about is our customer. Typically, clients choose to have customers integrate from their Salesforce environment to NetSuite when an opportunity goes into a closed won status. We'll take that same approach here, and we'll say that once Matt brought that opportunity into closed won, the client e-signed off on the quote or proposal that he demonstrated, this customer will automatically come into NetSuite. There we can track some primary information like the customer name, the company name, address, terms, etc. But what we want to focus on today is really the transactional flow of what happens next. The second thing we're going to look at is a sales order. Again, the concept here and the theme of the webinar is better together, right? Peanut butter and jelly. We want this information to flow downstream from your Salesforce environment into NetSuite so that we're omitting things like manual entry, double keying, and really error-prone manual processes. When we take a look at this sales order, we can see we have the sales order is tied to our Ohana customer. We have the date of it. We could have a start and end date if this is more of a contractual type agreement that covers a period of performance. The customer may optionally give us a purchase order number that we can put on our invoices and external communication to make sure they're aligning it to their internal systems as well. We can define a memo to really understand what the booking is for. As we scroll down, we can identify things like what subsidiary or legal entity we're transacting in, what department, class, and location from a segment perspective. But really, the magic here is that we're going to go ahead and take all of the different products that were selected in the magic of the CPQ tool and make sure we're aligning that to how we're executing on this particular booking. Here, I have an example of an IT services organization that those products that you saw in CPQ translate to the following areas on the sales order. So we have a planning item, design, development, testing, training, deployment, and support. Some of the areas that CPQ covered was maybe we can never sell development without training. We can never sell the whole bundle of an implementation without deployment or support. So really making sure that your business logic translate to how you sell and to how you execute on these projects. So here you can see I have my various products that integrated from Salesforce, the quantities of those that were sold, and then the pricing that Matt was showing upstream with the fully discounted rates, etc. Now from here, what we also like to do is really automate the creation of the project. So you can see that this particular sales order is related to an IT services project. And if we take a look at that project, there's a number of things we're going to track there. Again, we have our primary information where we can have a specific job ID, a more readable job name. It's tied to our Ohana customer. And we can track various things like job manager or project manager, who is ultimately responsible for the completion of this project. The status, we can say in process, not started, complete. Our project overview, which is going to capture things like how much work did we have actually planned, how much have we allocated to our various resources, how many hours have we worked on it, and what do we have remaining. The really magic here is what does it give us from a percent complete calculation, percent complete by allocated work. And some of these areas I do want you to remember because these are going to be things that we're going to be talking about as it relates to communication with the external client from an Experience Cloud perspective. As we move down, we can see our project dates, what our scheduling method is, what the start date of the project is. NetSuite will then start to calculate an end date based on how many hours are inputted. And we can also do baselining, meaning we take a snapshot at a various point in time and do some variance reporting as the project plan starts to change. The last section is just, again, the segments of more of a GL type perspective to make sure that we have the ability to slice and dice project profitability by a number of different areas that our company is ultimately very interested in. When we get into kind of the nuts and bolts of the project, you can see that on my schedule tab, I have project tasks and milestones. In this particular example, and in many different implementations, we've aligned the way that we sell with the way that we're executing projects. So what's important to note here is that we have a one-to-one relationship of the items and products that were sold on our sales order and ultimately our upstream quote to our project task. So you can see the same planning, design, develop, training, deployment, support, etc. And again, this would be very specific to the way that you execute these types of projects. For each of our project tasks, we can identify them as either a milestone or a task. A milestone meaning more of a stage gate that needs to be either completed or not started. This may trigger things like billing, revenue recognition, whereas a project task is more along the lines of a task that we're charging time to. All of our tasks have start and end dates. They can all be baselined individually. And there's a bunch of different views that we can take to see things like how much work was planned, calculated, estimated costing, and there's a lot of different information that we can track at the project task level. Ultimately, we want to make sure that we're automating the creation of your WBS as much as we can to avoid, again, the manual entry. As we're moving right across the tabs, you'll see we have our resourcing tab where we can go and we can resource individuals on our project. Again, we have a various different ways to accomplish this, but at the very simple level, we may say, I want to go ahead and resource an employee named IT resource because we're not terribly creative against this project, against our development task, between this start date and end date, and I want to allocate 100 hours. We can allocate based on hours or a percentage of time. And our allocation type is hard or soft. And this just gives us more of a, did I pencil this individual in, or is this a hard allocation that I need this individual to work on this project for? And we can see that we can have any number of resources identified on the project. We can have some information, so giving us who the name of the resource is, email, what their role is on the project. And then also things like, I want to be able to track their time against the project. And we'll take a look at this from more of a weekly time card perspective, but how much time was entered and what is the status of that time? Was it billed, not billed? Maybe it's marked as non-billable, all dependent on what type of project we have. On the financial tab, we're defining a number of different things, but mainly what I want to bring to your attention is billing types. You can see that this particular project is charge-based billing, meaning I'm really doing more of a time and material-based billing. We can define our billing rate cards, and again, this can be brought from the upstream services, upstream applications like Salesforce to have our pricing flow all the way into our project billing to make sure we're aligning to the proposal that was actually signed. We have our primary currency, and this can be in any currency that we have set up in NetSuite with an exchange rate. At the very bottom, we have what's called a percent complete override, and this really talks to the revenue recognition elements of it. Some of our clients like to have NetSuite calculate our percent complete based on the number of hours worked over the number of hours that were planned for the project. Some actually like to dictate, like this example, a percent complete override to say that, hey, this project is 25% complete as of March 2020, and that's how much revenue I want to recognize for it. As we're moving down, we have things called charges. And charges can be used for a number of different areas. They can be used for recurring type billing. They can be used for time-based rules, fixed fee rules, expense rules, a number of different really flexible billing options we have. But for this example, we have 5 time charges created for actual time that was entered. All of our time was priced according to the proposal that was signed. We have our amount, and ultimately these charges generated an invoice for a quantity of 40 at our applicable rate. Okay. Now, if we talk a little bit about project status. So again, project status for us can handle a number of different things. One, communication to project managers, how they're actually executing on projects. This can be leveraged for internal stakeholders like executives or finance to really get an understanding of, are we profitable for this particular project or are we lagging behind? It can be used for external clients, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in Experience Cloud. And then really from more of a financial aspect, it can be a driver of revenue recognition. So for this example, we have what's called a revenue arrangement that helps us dictate really robust revenue recognition rules that that do follow things like GAAP and make sure that we're accounting for revenue applicably, and then make sure we have an audit trail. So a revenue recognition in this case is really a transaction in which we can recognize revenue based on a percentage of time on that project. And then the last thing we'll take a look at is, from an end user perspective, what do I actually have to enter? Now, what we're seeing here is that we have a weekly time card. And again, our resource just has to identify what projects that they're working on, what task within that project, and we can filter this task list based on just the projects and tasks that they've been assigned to, so they're not seeing a laundry list of projects, whether or not that time is billable, and we can have different rules for that as well to make sure that maybe we don't want the individual to choose if this is a billable or non-billable item, what service item we're billing against, and then some of the department class and locations that we can default from the employee record. So a number of different ways that we can handle this from the back end, but again, the theme is that all of this information is flowing downhill into Salesforce and we're actually executing this project according to how we sold it. And with that, we'll hand it back over to Matt to go over the service element of Salesforce.
All right, thank you. And to finish up our demonstration, we're going to be walking you through how you can use Salesforce not only to service your clients, but to give your clients access to information about the specific project. Starting with the service piece, what we're looking at right now is the Salesforce Service Console. And the idea is that Salesforce, in addition to managing your pipeline of new business, also has a very robust servicing capability where clients can, whether they email you a service request or go to a website and fill out a form or call you, you are able not only to just document all that in Salesforce, but you can also set up assignment rules based upon who should be assigned the ticket and a lot more complex functionality. What we're looking here is my open cases. So these are the cases or issues that have been assigned to me. Now, in this case, Rachel Harris is with the Ohana Corporation. So I'm going to pull up that specific case here. And as we scroll down, you can see Rachel Harris, and you can see that she's associated to Ohana. So when I am calling on Ohana about a potential sales opportunity, or should I say another sales opportunity, I've got the ability also to see what kind of issues have they had recently. Did we resolve them quickly? How happy or should I expect an issue when I go in and talk to them? So it allows you to have one view of the customer from an engagement standpoint around sales and service. Looking here at this issue, question, how do I enable automatic payment? I'd like to set up monthly, payment every month, so on and so forth. So the idea behind this console is that it gives you access to a lot of data all at once. One of the advanced features of the Salesforce Service Cloud is what's called knowledge. And the idea being is that based upon what the request is, Salesforce can recommend articles that might solve the problem for them. Now, in this case, I've got the question here, and I could write them an email. If I wanted to get back to them, I could give them a call. I could create a task for somebody else to follow up with them. I might, when I'm done, go in and update the case. It might be, though, that when they call in and ask for service, what they're really asking for is, hey, can you solve this problem? And it actually might lead to a new opportunity. So on this screen, it gives you the capabilities as a service agent to do a lot of different things. Now, I had mentioned knowledge earlier. So in this case, over here on the far right, we've got knowledge. And what it did was it sorted a couple of results based upon what they're asking for. So here's a frequently asked question about billing in terms of payment terms and timing. And as I hover over it, I can see the information that's contained in this knowledge article. And if I determine, yes, that's exactly what they're looking for, I can just click here and drop down and say insert article into email. When I do that, what it's going to do is it's going to launch the email capability here where I am sending it out to Rachel. The subject is exactly the subject of the case, and I could either have pre-built text here, or I could type it in myself and then just come down here and click send. So the service capability in Salesforce, again, allows you to have one view of the customer, everything from a sales and from a servicing standpoint. Now, another way in which servicing can be accessed by clients is through a portal. Salesforce calls it communities. They call it their Experience Cloud now. And when I click here on the next tab, what you're going to see is this is the community that we, Sikich, provide our clients so that they can get access to their project and to be able to go in and see what we're doing and provide feedback. So I, in this case, would be coming in here, and as a client, I would be looking at my Ohana Salesforce deployment project. So what I can see is some high-level information here. 175 hours been budgeted. We've worked this much. We have this much remaining. But I want to see more information about the project. So when I click here on the Related tab, we can see that we've got what's called epics, and epics are high-level requirements. So one of the requirements I want to look at is the account contact setup. How are we going to set that up? So when I click here on the epic, what we're doing is we're going in, and while there's not a lot of information here, I have the ability to look at all of the user stories. So think of epics as high-level requirements and user stories as detailed requirements. So in this case, I've got 4 detailed requirements associated to a higher level. And the idea behind this is I, as the client, can come in at any time and look at a subset of the entire Salesforce system where I can only see my own project. I can't see other people's projects, just my own. But not only that, as I'm going through it, I can post something. If I see something that, hey, doesn't make sense, I have the ability to chat with the project team right from this. I could also, as I just showed you on the servicing side, if I had a billing question that's maybe related to the project, I could submit that through this. I could also provide feedback. So as I'm going through and I'm testing what was built for me, by requirement, I can approve it. I can provide feedback, hey, this needs more work, or this doesn't make sense. And this also provides a complete transparency between the vendor and the client around how the project will work. So from a Sikich standpoint, this is what we chose to deploy to our clients. And then we also give them the ability to see certain reports as it relates to their project. Other firms may want to deploy more functionality or less functionality to their clients. But the Experience Cloud from Salesforce is nothing more than a different skin to access the Salesforce database. But that skin, behind that skin, are rules that define what they can see and what they can't see. So that's all that the Experience Cloud is a portal for clients to be able to access their information, submit issues, and be able to collaborate better with our team. So I hope you enjoyed the demonstration of the Salesforce quoting, the NetSuite, the servicing, as well as the Experience Cloud / portal view for customers.
Thank you, Matt and Chris. Appreciate it. Like I said before, we will have a copy of this webinar sent out to everyone in a follow-up email. If you have any additional questions that we weren't able to get to today, please make sure to send those questions in that follow-up email. We'll get one of our professional consultants to answer it as soon as possible. Thanks again, everyone, for being here, and we'll see you next time.